Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parents. In today's episode, my entitled parents kidnapped me and held me hostage at their home after a major car accident. Update: my entitled parents kidnapped me and held me hostage at their home after a major car accident. I saved their son's life and they try to make me pay. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. My entitled parents kidnapped me and held me hostage at their home after a major car accident. I, 32F, was in a major car accident in January of 2021. Ironically, I had been taking my boyfriend, 36M, to the ER because he had bleeding ulcers and ended up getting admitted to the hospital that night. This was still when they were enforcing COVID rules, so I was booted out of the hospital at about 0300 in the morning. When I left it was snowing, and not thinking hopped on the freeway, which wasn't a good idea. I had been driving a lifted Jeep Cherokee with mud terrain tires, not the best ever for snowstorm driving. Getting off the freeway to go home, my brakes locked up and I went into a light pole headfirst at about 60 miles per hour. My Jeep did not have airbags. That was dumb. Needless to say, my car was totaled and I had to be extracted from the car by the fire department. This whole time I had been blacking out and losing consciousness, and I still get random flashes of I don't have all my memories from that night or several months after the accident. I got sent to the nearest trauma center, which was the same hospital I had just left. The nurses felt pretty bad about kicking me out. I ended up with a moderate to severe TBI, broken under my left eye, hairline fractures on my skull on the left side, bruising behind my ears, and black eyes. I had also cut open the inside of my mouth, had multiple lacerations all over my face. I broke my driver's side window with my face, broke and bruised some ribs, had hairline fractures in my spine, broke my right wrist, my right knee and my left foot, which required 2 surgeries, and I still need approximately 3 more. Needless to say, I was not doing great. I had recently gotten divorced the previous year and think that my entitled parents decided that my accident was my boyfriend's fault. I had to stay in the hospital for a total of 12 days, in which case the mild family drama exploded into a severe family inferno. As I got closer to being released, all I had wanted to do was go home to my boyfriend and our kids. He had 2 previously, and I had 1. My entitled mother decided that wasn't what she wanted. On the phone we sound almost identical. The whole time that I was in the hospital, she had been getting on the phone and impersonating me to my apartment complex management, even going as far as calling the cops to get my boyfriend and his 2 kids removed from my apartment. They were not on my lease yet. My EM also forged my signature on hospital paperwork and made up a story about how my boyfriend was abusive to me, and got him banned from seeing me at the hospital. Again, forging my signature and writing a letter stating I didn't want to see him. This whole time I was still suffering from the effects of my TBI and was delirious from the combination of pain medications and brain fog from my head injury. EM even had the locks changed on my apartment without my consent. When I finally was released from the hospital, I was in a wheelchair because of my broken foot that had just had 2 plates and 10 screws surgically put in to hold it together, and an ankle to hip brace on my other leg from my knee being broken. I requested to go home to my apartment, but again EM played it that I couldn't go home because I had a 2nd-story apartment and couldn't take care of myself. So I got sent to stay at my parents' house, against my will, an hour away from home because EM wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to let my boyfriend come back to my apartment. I spent almost a whole miserable month there. EM refused to take me home even after I got crutches and was able to bear some weight. Initially, they refused to even go get my crutches from town because they didn't want me to have more mobility. Eventually, it got to the point where I had a friend come and pick me up from EM's house so I could go home because they kept refusing to let me go. As I gained clarity in my mind and was taken off the intense pain medication, I was able to start rectifying the situations that EM made a huge mess of in my life, but I'm still trying to recover in some areas. I didn't find out until much later when medical bills started coming in that EM had called my boyfriend's health insurance company, impersonating me, and had me removed from his insurance. It took months of calling and badgering and footwork on my part to get the situation figured out and have the insurance pay for what they were supposed to pay for. It almost caused me to go bankrupt. At the same time, EM signed me up for minimal health insurance coverage through the state that I had no idea I was enrolled in until I got a bill later stating that I back owed fees. Needless to say, I eventually completely cut both EM and my father out of life after finding out how much they tried to control and how much they messed my life up. I ended up getting protection orders after they tried to break into my house, stalked me, and sent family and friends over to harass me. This whole incident was the straw that broke the camel's back. There was quite a bit of retaliation on their side that threw my life into a total tailspin ever since, but I'm sticking to my guns and not backing down. Update. Wow. I'm a little overwhelmed with how fast this post exploded yesterday. I was definitely not expecting that. I tried to keep up with as many comments and replies as possible, but I figured this might be an easier way to answer the questions that have been thrown at me. But first off, I definitely understand those who were skeptical about my post. It's more than a little bizarre, and I'm probably not the best at describing some of the situations. But I seriously appreciate all the great advice that has been given, and I'm looking at some of the other options listed in the comments as well as what I am already doing. I think the easiest part for me to clear up is the questions about the insurance and my EM getting me off of the insurance I had with my boyfriend and putting me on the state insurance without my or my boyfriend's consent. As an adult, I can call in and cancel my coverage at any time, with or without the policyholder's knowledge. There doesn't need to be a major life change in order to be taken off of a policy, usually just to get new insurance coverage or add someone to insurance. All my EM needed was the insurance information and access to my information as well as his, which she did. She already had all of my personal information, including my SS number and my insurance information. This is how she signed me up for insurance coverage through the state as well. As some of you speculated, I'm sure it had something to do with the financial control she could exert over me as well as trying to totally get my boyfriend out of my life. But honestly, I will probably never get the real answers to that. The reason why I didn't get the hospital bills immediately is a pretty easy explanation. First off, my car insurance coverage included medical bill payments as well up to a certain amount of money. At first, going through the billing process, the hospital, orthopedics, anesthesiologist CCT had to send their bills through my car insurance first and then through my health insurance. I'm not 100% sure how that all works exactly, but I do know it was a mess and it took multiple tries to explain to all the doctors what was already paid out, who got what money, and the next insurance to the bill. As well as it took weeks for them and myself to realize that while I was in the hospital, the insurance I went in with got cancelled mid-hospital stay. So bills got sent out to the insurance I had to my boyfriend, which was followed by confusion from the hospital, insurance companies, and myself trying to figure out when it got cut off, what was covered, and what exactly happened. This takes time, it doesn't happen overnight. My EM did tell me eventually what she had done with my insurance and how she changed it, but by that point, it was too late and I was scrambling to try and rectify the situation and get as much covered from my hospital stay as possible. Even doing that, I still owe nearly $50,000 in medical bills. For those who had questions about how I had gotten on his insurance in the first place, when he started the job, he had the insurance from which we had qualified as domestic partners because of how long we had been living together and how long the relationship had lasted. For everyone wondering if we went to the cops or are filing charges or anything along those lines, it's a very long story, but yes, we are. I have a very good lawyer who actually represents myself and my boyfriend. It took me a while after I got home to my apartment to get to the point where I cut contact with EM. When I finally got home, I tried to start seeing my boyfriend again, and we started the long process of trying to heal from what happened since EM had essentially kicked him and his 2 kids out of my apartment in the middle of winter. They really had nowhere else to go. The kids ended up staying with friends for a while and he stayed in his car and rented a hotel room when possible. I wasn't fully aware of what exactly was going on at the time, as EM had my cell phone and access to my phone, and while I was at her home she watched like a hawk to make sure that I wasn't contacting him. If I did, I got berated, screamed at, and at one point did not have access to my phone, which was all very confusing because I was on very heavy-duty pain medication, as well as having the confusion from the TBI. After I had made it back to my apartment and started to have more contact with my boyfriend, my EM escalated. Staying at my apartment even though I told her I was fine, showing up randomly, and eventually getting so angry that I refused to cut contact with my boyfriend that she threatened to kill him. That was when I grew a slight backbone and decided that it just wasn't going to get better. At that point, I filed for a protection as well as my boyfriend, who copied my paperwork. When the first protection orders got dropped because we didn't have enough evidence, she had gotten a lawyer at this point, but we did not because we couldn't pay for a retainer, and this was before I had gotten smart enough to install cameras and a call recorder on my phone. My EM went to the city's prosecutor's office and told them that she wanted to press charges of perjury against my boyfriend. This is where the friendship with the prosecutor started, and it was very hard for us to get anything to stick because EM was getting in with our local PD and the prosecutor. Yes, they ended up going after my boyfriend and not me. Yes, that is selective prosecution. Yes, it is very illegal. At this same time, my mother and father are retired and apparently have nothing better to do with themselves. They had been in contact with my boyfriend's ex-wife, and at the same time we were getting beaten down with the perjury case, they also helped my boyfriend's ex-wife start a custody battle for his children. They had been separated for some time, but the divorce had been stalled in court for several years at this point. They also filed in small claims court for lawyer and court fees after our first protection order was removed. My ex-husband had been allowing my daughter to see both of my parents still, which I did fight and which has probably spurred the grandparents' rights/visitation case that they filed during this same time. So we have been fighting one thing at a time and collecting all of the evidence that we can. All of the hospital paperwork, especially those that were forged, had to be requested from the hospital. The phone calls to the insurance company needed to be requested, and we needed our lawyer to get those. It wasn't something they were just going to give us, unfortunately. At this point, we have waited though almost all of the court filings my EM had thrown at us, and we are finishing gathering out evidence so we can counterattack at this point. At the time our lawyer was telling us to be patient and gather as much as we could, as when we get through the thick of it we can throw what we have into the system, but we needed and want to have enough to nail them to the wall. From here, there will be counter lawsuits, both jointly between myself and my boyfriend and separate lawsuits, as well as submitting what we have for the identity theft. It's a very long process and it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to get things moving. For those of you wondering if me and my boyfriend got back together and how that is going, yes, we did get back together. It didn't take long for me to start realizing what was happening when I wasn't being given the heavy narcotics, and my brain started the healing process from the TBI. It did take time for me to wade through everything that happened and try and recall memories. We did get back together, found a new place, and moved back in together with his 2 kids and my daughter. We have had some hard times, and of course, we are both a little damaged from the whole process, but we both have counseling, are doing well. I hope this helps explain and expand on the questions everyone has been asking in the comments. If you haven't already, file criminal charges against your parents, at least for the identity theft, etc. We've been in and out of court for almost the past year. There's been a pretty big power struggle where they tried to file perjury against me for filing for protection orders to them filing for grandparents' custody and visitation of my daughter. Since they are friends with the prosecutor and my EM is amazing at playing victim and manipulation, it's been a big uphill battle. But we're finally getting somewhere. And don't forget all the fraud and lies that was committed. I hope that there is an ongoing investigation into your parents for identity theft, fraud, and kidnapping. Cutting them off doesn't even come near to cutting it. This is beyond illegal. I can't even wrap my head around it. This is like a terrifying film plot. Where was your child during all of this? My kids stayed with my ex-husband for part of it. After I left the hospital, they had me and my daughter at their home except for when my ex-husband had his standard custody time with her. She's very smart, and I ended up having to get her into counseling and eventually filing restraining orders. She's 5 now. She ended up regressing in a big way, wetting the bed and having night terrors, because my mother had been telling my daughter all about how she was going to break into our home and kill all of us, including our animals, because I wouldn't talk to them. I'm sorry, but your parents need to be sent to jail and fined for their actions. All of that was unacceptable, if not illegal. Oh, for sure the mom impersonating Opie and forging her signature is illegal. At a minimum. Please tell me that you and your BF are still going strong after this. We are. It took us a while to sort through which actions were mine and which were my since I couldn't recall almost anything that had happened. We found a different place to live and moved back in together and are expecting a baby in February. Sue identity theft charge is pending, right? Restraining order too? These are some of the worst parents I have read about here. They just basically kidnapped you and overrode your entire life. Staying NC with them is the right thing to do. They are awful. I still don't get how someone can take you of a person's health insurance by simply calling and making a funny voice. This has to be done by the main person on the insurance, and that was not you. If your boyfriend had this insurance because of this work, I would have the company's insurance contact person contact the insurance company and them find this out as well. I can't figure out how she got on his insurance in the first place. Spouse and kids are the only ones generally covered. Please tell me you found a good lawyer. Hopefully in the next few years you will be able to buy a house after suing your parents. Update: my entitled parents kidnapped me and held me hostage at their home after a major car accident. It's been about 6 months since I posted the original here and posted a clarifying update after getting slammed with a ton of comments from everyone. It's still getting new comments every day, which just blows my mind. I kind of laughed at a lot of the comments that were doubting that it was a true story, because honestly I wish it had been. I really appreciate the supportive comments from everyone who sent them too. It helped me feel a lot more validated in making sure that I stayed far away from my parents and smashed down those feelings of regrets and guilt. Not much headway has happened in the legal department. It has been taking much longer than we had hoped. A lot of our lawsuits are dependent on when my boyfriend's probation ends. Just to remind whoever reads this, he was arrested for perjury on a protection order that we both filed against my parents because we messed up on a date. Even though our paperwork was exactly the same, he was arrested for perjury and I wasn't because my mother is friends with some of the people in the prosecutor's office. He ended up taking a plea deal and had to do some community service, and we're waiting for his probation time to end so we can launch our countersuits. His divorce was finalized in March, which was a total circus. My mother left his ex-wife to sink or swim and even refused to show up for her to be a witness during their divorce trial. We got full custody of his children, and we have been focusing on healing our family. We had our baby in February, a week earlier than planned, with an emergency C-section due to a partial placental abruption. We've been very busy focusing on our kids and learning how to take steps to heal ourselves and help our kids heal from everything they have gone through. We've been getting our finances in order and are looking at buying a home with room enough for all of us. And looking at both of us finishing school, which is easier said than done. I have to come up with $10,000 to go back and finish. The medical debt has been slowly getting removed from my credit as I've been disputing it, and we are finally stabilizing. We also finally got married, which is helping the kids feel more stable. Everything has been going really well, thanks for all the well wishes. Sorry the update isn't as excited as I wish it would have been. It would have been really satisfying to completely bury my parents in litigation and such, and we are planning to do some damage once his probation is done, but we're learning that some of the healing process is moving on and succeeding. I am happy things are looking up and really hope you get the lawsuits goings. Thank you. We keep going back and forth. We still have time to decide how to proceed legally, but there's a part of us that just wants to move on past the nightmare and a part that wants to set their entire world on fire. So glad to hear the update. As soon as read the title, I remember reading about your crazy parents 6 months ago. At least you guys are making good progress. Hope it all ends well. You said you wished your post could be more exciting. You got married, had a healthy baby, got custody of his kiddos, and everyone seems to be healing moving forward. I think that's all pretty exciting after everything you've been through. Though I would be lying if I said I wasn't hoping for some legal whammy on your sperm donor and incubator, considering everything they did to you. Absolute insanity. I wish you all the best in the future, may it be a lot more peaceful and healthy. Glad to hear things are evening out. I hope it continues to be smooth sailing from here on out. OP. Why did the parents do this? Like, I feel I've missed the actual motivation for being this unbelievably evil. Of course, we don't know these people specifically, and we aren't trained professionals, but one common reason could be narcissism. If you haven't spent time reading up on narcissism, give it a go, because there's some fascinating information out there. Some people's brains act in wild ways. I suggest going after the local PD and the prosecutor for selective persecution, since they went only after your BF and not you. And make sure you have evidence to back it up, along with talking to your lawyer to see if there is a way to charge your mother with the selective persecution. That's exactly what we plan on doing. But our lawyer suggested we wait until after his probation is completed. They did a withheld judgment, so it'll get taken care of once his time is up. Then we can move forward with going after them and filing the lawsuits. I saved their son's life and they try to make me pay. For background information, erase the story. I'm 15F, and one of my closest friends is 19F, who we will call C. Her boyfriend, myself, Z, 23M, were hanging out with Z's friend E, 23M. Z was mad after a 14-year-old girl called him a pedophile. He is, and she had reason for calling him that. Z and E went for a walk in a nearby forest and came back 20 minutes later with a random dead plant, which also happened to be one of the most toxic plants in our province. I've done a lot of extensive research on plants in our province merely because it had interested me, and I knew that plant was a spotted water hemlock. I told him to put it down, and what did he do? He took a huge bite out of the stem. Luckily, because the plant was dead, it had lost some of its toxicity, but not enough for it to not be potentially fatal. I immediately called an ambulance for him and spent the whole night in the hospital for him while he got treatment. I spent the hours from 6 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. in the hospital with him, missing out on my job. I didn't leave the hospital for anything because Z wanted me to stay there. I've never particularly liked Z, partly because his aggression and his pedophilic tendencies didn't stop at that one 14-year-old previously mentioned. This all happened a month and a half ago. 3 days ago, I was hanging out with my friend C and Z again, and Z informed me his parents want me to pay for the ambulance. I told him blatantly I refused to pay for saving their son's life. Personally, I think he should pay. He's a 23-year-old man crying out loud, and I'm a 15-year-old girl who had to save his life after he did something I told him not to. For what I currently know, his parents are still trying to get me to pay, and unless a court deems me liable to pay, I will continue to ignore their belligerence. Edit: I live in Canada, for those who are wondering. I don't live with my parents and I pay for my own bills, minus food, thanks to my non-official caregiver. I have 4 jobs but don't work many hours because of what my jobs are. I have 3 cleaning jobs. Job 1, I work 2 hours Mon, Tuesday, Wed, Thursday. Job 2, every Monday. Job 3, every second Tuesday, and the last job is a restaurant job in which they call me in if it's a busy night. He's 23. He is responsible for the bill. His parents would have no legal standing to sue you on behalf of an adult just based on what you're saying. They have no legal grounds to sue me on. They want to make me pay for his ambulance ride because I called it. I didn't call it for no reason. I called it because his life was in danger, and although I have no respect for him, I wasn't going to let him die. Not to mention that, at least in my province, ambulance rides are only a few hundred max, nothing like the States. I can't even imagine going after the 15-year girl that saved my son's life over $100. Although from the sounds of it, as ZS parents, I'd rather have the $100 than the creepy AF son. Please stop hanging out with 23-year-olds, especially those that have a history of creeping on minors. I'm not sure where you live, but you are a minor and can't be held responsible for anything. I live in Canada, and although I know that I can't be held accountable, ZS parents don't. From what I know, they may attempt taking me to court, but due to the situation, it's likely they will lose. A 15-year-old with 4 jobs doesn't live with parents and hangs out with a known pedophile? Oh my. It's possible to hold 4 small jobs. You could be walking dogs, babysitting, a part-time job etc. Bruv. Why are you friends with a pedophile, and why would you bother calling to save a pedophile? I don't like him and never have. My first interaction with him was him slitting his wrist after my ex-girlfriend rejected him. She was 15 and he was 22. A week later he showed us the scar, and it was the line in which your skin folds. I called an ambulance because honestly I wasn't about to get charged for not being a good Samaritan, and because the death is slow and painful, your respiratory muscles slowly seize and you suffocate slowly while remaining consciousness. Why are you hanging out with 20-year-olds and a known pedophile? What is wrong with you? Get away from them and protect yourself. Pedophilic tendencies isn't a thing. They're just a pedophile. Period. And I know you don't want to hear it, but you're way too young to be hanging out with people that age. It shows their lack of maturity. Take it from someone who moved out on their own at 15, was mature for their age, and only had 19-year-plus-old friends. It says something about them, and it's not going to be good for you. You are who your friends are. This sounds like something your parents should be handling on your behalf. Although I am young, I no longer live with my parents. My mom was violent and verbally abusive, and my dad was a drug addict who beat my mom. I have no legal guardian, but am living with an adult not legally or genetically bound to me. I have 4 of my own jobs and pay for my own medical and personal expenses. My caregiver pays for my food and water and has been a parent for the past 100 days but has no legal obligation to. I've informed her about the situation and she agrees with me. Why are you, a 15-year-old girl, friends with a 23-year-old pedophile? This is just wrong on so many levels. Don't sweat the small stuff, love. You did what you needed to do. Move on from this trashy person and live your best life. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.